us, and if they don't, it's their problem, their loss. But we're going to learn the Talmud. Today we're going to this Pesachim, which is beginning with Bo'o Minei, and it's unfortunate that I wasn't able to print you guys sheets today because there's some very interesting things I wanted you to pay attention to, including the very word Bo'o Minei. Bo'o Minei is one of the greatest and important keywords that you could learn in the entire Talmud. Bo'o Minei, or the truth is it could also be Bo'o, or there's a lot of other different versions of this Bo'o Minei, Bo'o, what is it? Iboi Lahu, right? An abaya. An abaya is like a question. Okay? Now, why is this super important to your Talmudic development? Is because whenever you have this type of question, it's a very specific type of question. You have a question in the Gemara that perhaps is challenging a previous opinion or questioning a previous opinion, and then you just have a random question which you may call in English an inquiry. Inquiry, right? It's not against, it's not pro, it's just like, I don't know what's going on. Right? Now, whenever you have this type of question, you also know that you're starting a new discussion. Okay? Hence why we're beginning this week with Bo'o Minei. Right? There's, when I'm preparing the class, I have to know when to make the quota, when to start the quota, when to end the quota. You should know that I use a lot of tools like keywords when I know that if this word is there, that on its own means that the new quota is starting, meaning it's a new discussion, and therefore I can make a new quota over there. As a matter of fact, next week already, I ended with another very important keyword that tells us that a new discussion is being started, which is?
Meisvei.
No, Meisvei, on the contrary, Meisvei, absolutely not. Meisvei is smack in the middle of the discussion. If you have the word Meisvei, you're smack in the middle of the discussion. You had an opinion, Meisvei is challenging said opinion. You can't stop there. I can't stop a quota by Meisvei. Because if I stop a quota by Meisvei, we're going to start a week. Imagine we start a week with Meisvei. We're challenging a previous opinion. What's the previous opinion? Right? That doesn't make sense to start a new week in the middle of a discussion. However, Bo'o Minei is always going to be a beginning of the discussion, as well as if you look at the end of this week's quota is Tanu Rabbanon. Tanu Rabbanon is also a new discussion. Tanu Rabbanon is a quote from a Braisatic quote. From a Brisa, it is a Tanaic era quote that was not included in the Mishnah. And Tanu Rabbanon as well is always, as far as I know, is always going to be a brand new discussion. Huh? No, it cannot be Meisvei Tanu Rabbanon. It doesn't exist. Because it wouldn't make any sense. Because Meisvei itself is we're challenging. No, we're not. You don't. First of all, you don't challenge a Tanu Rabbanon. No. I hate to break it to you. You don't have that type of wording, right? You could say Meisvei did Tanu, that it was taught. But if you say Tanu Rabbanon is opening up a new discussion. It may be on the same topic of the previous conversation. That's why if you know when we teach Gemara, I use this terminology. I kind of made it up myself, but it's a very important terminology. There's a conversation and a discussion. When we're having a conversation, a conversation is really a collection of discussions. Okay? We're talking back and forth. We're having a conversation. We speak for an hour, right? For the first 10 minutes, we're having a discussion about Israeli politics. And then for another 10 minutes, we're having a discussion about the price of tea in China, right? And for another 10 minutes, we're having another discussion about something else. Now, very often, the conversation is somewhat interconnected with each other, so you're not just randomly talking about new things. But a new discussion means that we finished whatever we were discussing before, and now we're going to discuss something new. And if you ask me offhand, the only two keywords that I can think of that clearly, absolutely tells you that it's a brand new discussion, welcome Mendel, is either anything that is connected to Iboilahu, Bo'o Minei, the word Bo'o, which is like an inquiry, that's always going to be a new discussion, as well as Tanu Rabbanon. Tanu Rabbanon is also a brand new discussion. If anybody can share with me, anybody over there, that understands the Talmudic way of thinking, if you could find me another keyword that proves that it's a new discussion, please let me know, so I can add it to my list, but I think that that's the only one. And again, the Tana Rabbanon is the same word every time. The Bo Minei, there are different, how should I say, there's brothers and sisters of Bo Minei. Bo Minei is they asked from him, which they're asking an inquiry from a particular rabbi. Iboilahu is the general Gemara saying we're asking a general inquiry. We're not necessarily asking from a particular rabbi. Bo Minei is in fact telling you that there was a student that once asked the rabbi that question. Okay, and that's how we're starting this week's Talmudic session, or as some people like calling it, Talmudic ritual. It's like a ritual, right? All right, ready to go? I see that there aren't many Gemaras open over here, which definitely gets me a little bit. There's a whole bunch of Gemaras over there. Some of them are Pesachim, some of them aren't Pesachim. Just make sure that you see which one is which, and weiter gegangen. All right, please. We are on a line that starts Bo'ol Minei, in a word that starts Bo'ol Minei. It is about 2/3 down from the top the page, or a little bit 1/3 from the bottom. It's a little bit more than 1/3 from the bottom. Bo'ol Minei. Bo'ol Minei Ravina Rav Nachman. So Ravina was a great rabbi, a great sage. If you're collecting names of sages, you got one right here, Ravina and Rav Nachman. Ravina was one rabbi, and he asked an inquiry of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, the Rav Nachman, the son of bar Yitzchak. Mi shaloi kiddush be'erev Shabbos mahu sheyikadish v'hoylech kol hayom kuloi. What happens if a person did not make kiddush on Friday night? Right? Friday night, we sit around the table, we pick up the cup of wine, and we say a blessing, and that is a way of sanctifying the Shabbat, showing that the Sabbath is holy. Friday night, we make Kiddush, right? What happens if a person did not say Kiddush on Friday night? Could he say Kiddush the entire Shabbos? Meaning, is it something that you can make up the entire Shabbos, or are you done? Now, I see a bunch of faces over here, because you guys are a little bit involved in Judaism for a while, and you're telling me, what are you talking about? We always make Kiddush in the day, right? We don't make Kiddush in the day? We don't make Kiddush during the day. You don't make Kiddush? You don't make Kiddush during the day. You don't make Kiddush. Why don't you make Kiddush during the day? We make Kiddush during the day. It's called Kedusha Rabbah. Yeah? That's called Kiddush. We call Kiddush. And also you say Kishesh Yom Mosa Hashem Es Hashemayim Bezaretz. It's all Pesukim. So even though it sounds like I'm making fun of men of Shmuel, but the fact is there is some truth to what he's saying. We call Kiddush during the day. However, Kiddush during the day was actually a rabbinic establishment. And as a rabbinic establishment, they did not establish a blessing of Kiddush. There's no specific blessing for Kiddush during the day. No such thing. I'm sorry. It doesn't happen. All right? We just say a list of verses from the Torah that speak about Shabbat, just to mention that it's Shabbat. And then we say the blessing on the wine, Boide Pri Hagofen. Right? The blessing on the wine. We don't actually make a specific, unique blessing to Kiddush on Shabbat day, right? So the question that Ravina is asking Rav Nachman, what if a person did not say Kiddush on Friday night, which is a specific blessing sanctifying Shabbat? What if he didn't do it? Could you say that same blessing for the rest of Shabbat to make up for it? Or is that blessing only meant to be Friday night, and if you missed it on Friday night, you can't say the blessing again? So again, that's the inquiry, right? We got the inquiry? Good. It's a good question, by the way. I actually do not know the final halacha. If you want, you can look it up in Shulchan Aruch. We learn in the Gemara. Not necessarily is it the final rule, what we learn in the Gemara, but I don't know the answer to the question. What happens if a person slept in Friday night, didn't do Kiddush? Do you do Kiddush the next day? Do you say the whole bracha? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddush haram b'mitzvos v'ratzabanu v'Shabbat kadosh chaba v'ratzin chilanu zikaron l'maaseh b'reish d'chil mikoi kodesh zeicher l'tzias Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta v'hosanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. Do you do that during the day if you forgot to do it at night? What do you say? You want to say something? Yeah, what?
No, nothing like actually.
Huh? Yeah.
If you didn't eat before, then yeah, you would.
Huh?
If you didn't eat before,
And if you did eat, why not? Why not?
I'm opposite.
There's a blessing that the rabbis established to sanctify the Shabbat. It's called Kiddush. You didn't say it, so what? What about Friday night? What happens if Friday night you eat before Kiddush? Does that mean you don't say Kiddush anymore? No. So why would that be different than the day? You already had a meal. Well, what? So if I already had a meal Friday night, I don't have to say Kiddush anymore? Huh? Again, if a person didn't listen to the rule or maybe didn't know it was Friday night and ate a full meal and finished a full meal on Friday night, he started on Friday night and ended Friday night, but it's still Friday night. Does he make Kiddush? Yes, absolutely, unequivocally, yes. He did the whole meal. He's still 100%. He has to make Kiddush. He has to do Kiddush, of course. Why not? Because what? You're not... What sanctification? Again, there's two separate things. Okay, remember we had this discussion in the past. Eating a meal for Shabbat, in honor of Shabbat, and blessing Shabbat with Kiddush are two separate things. Happens to be the rabbis put them together. The rabbi said you should do them together. You should make the Kiddush together with your meal. However, your meal and your Kiddush are two completely different concepts. Completely different concepts. And therefore, perhaps, maybe, you should say Kiddush Shabbos day if you did not say Shabbos night. Yeah? So that's the question Ravina has to Rav Nachman. All right? And that's the beginning of the discussion. As you can see, this is not anything that we discussed before. We didn't even mention it in the slightest. It's a brand new discussion. Didn't say anything about it before. It is on the topic because we were speaking about Kiddush. So that's the only thing. All right? Good. So now we say Omar Lei, he said to him as follows. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak responds to Ravina as follows. He's about to answer the question. What is he answering? Omar Lei mit de Omri b'nei Rabbi Chia. Mishal hivdil b'mitzvah Shabbos mavdil b'hoilich kol haShabbos kulei. Rabbi Chia says that if a person did not do Havdalah, they can do Havdalah the entire week to come. And just so we know, the Rashbam says that he doesn't literally mean the entire week to come, only till Tuesday. And by the way, that is, I know for a fact that is the halacha. If a person failed to make Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos, you can make the Havdalah all the way till Tuesday evening. Till it gets dark on Tuesday, you can say the Havdalah. What are you talking about? Who said that? Where? Huh? No, so ad revi b'Shabbos, meaning till Wednesday, doesn't mean including Wednesday. Again, the fact is the word ad, I think, was it you that had the discussion? The word ad sometimes means including and sometimes means excluding. Okay, and it's very difficult because for some reason in the ancient text, when they use the word ad, which means until sometimes included it and sometimes didn't include it, I'm assuming that this particular ad is not including Wednesday, which means the second you hit Wednesday, you're not. As a matter of fact, Kabbalistically, Shabbat is connected from Wednesday till Tuesday, which means Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are connected to Shabbat as kind of like the preparation, the welcoming to Shabbat, as well as Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are kind of like connected to the previous Shabbat. As a matter of fact, those of you who read the Siddur on Wednesday, when we do the song of the day during the morning prayer, we say what? What's the last three verses? Here's a guy opening the book right here for us, Baruch Hashem. What are the last verses there? The last three verses in the morning prayer when we say the song of the day, which is a special song that the Levites would sing in the temple for every single day of the week. There was a separate song. Sunday they had one song, Monday a different song, Tuesday a different song, Wednesday a different song. What's taking you so long? Hurry up. Every week, meaning, yeah. Oh, so here we have it, and if you look at the last three verses are Lechu neranun al Hashem, nariel etzur yisheinu nekan mefana beseides bezmis nariel leiki kel godel Hashem umelach godel al kol elihim. Right? Does that sound familiar to you? What does it sound? That is the beginning of the Shabbat prayer, the welcoming of Shabbat. And that's why it is over here in Wednesday, right? Because on Wednesday when we sing the song of the day, by the way, if you look at it, that's actually a separate psalm. It's actually the only one of the songs of the day that is not a complete psalm. All the other song of the day is a complete chapter of Tehillim, of Psalms, right? And no more, no less. Revi'i, if you look at it, if you know from Tehillim, from Psalms, you'll see that it is the entire, which one is it? It is the entire, that doesn't say it there. Psalm, it's the entire Psalm 82, but there's three verses from L'chun Ranana, right? So we add it to show that on Wednesday we begin preparing for Shabbat. Okay, now, Rabbi Chia, who is this? Hold on a second. Who is this? Wait. Oh. Rabbi Chia, the children of Rabbi Chia, they said that if you don't do Havdalah on Saturday night, you can do it all the way till Wednesday, not including Wednesday. Yeah? So, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak wants to use this as proof. You're listening? He wants to use this as proof that if you didn't make Kiddush Friday night, you make Kiddush the whole Shabbos. He says, Hochanami, here too. Mishaloi Kiddush be'erev Shabbos. If you did not make Kiddush Friday night, you make Mishkadosh v'hoilach kolayim kulay. Just like Havdalah is after Shabbos, and what is considered after Shabbos? After Shabbos is considered from Saturday night all the way through Tuesday, right? It's still considered post-Shabbat, right? And since the entire post-Shabbat is worthy of doing the Havdalah ceremony, so he says the same thing. The whole Shabbat is worthy of doing the Kiddush ceremony. So he is deducing from that to this. That is this very common thing in the Talmud. When you have one rule, you see another rule, you say, what's the difference? Seemingly it's built on the same logic, right? Over there we say the whole post Shabbat you could say Havdalah. Even though you're meant to do it Saturday night, but if you didn't do it Saturday night, the entire post Shabbat, which goes all the way to Tuesday, is still a valid time to say Havdalah. Right? However, so it's not however, therefore, the same should apply to Shabbat. That the entire Shabbat you should be able to say Kiddush. Yeah? Good? Let's continue.
Up until Tuesday night, before Wednesday.
Again, let's understand. The children of Rabbi Chia says that up until Wednesday you can say Havdalah. Why? Because even though you're meant to say Havdalah Saturday night, but up until Wednesday is considered post-Shabbat, and therefore you could still say Havdalah. So he's trying to deduce, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is trying to deduce from here that even though you're meant to do Kiddush on Friday night, you can do Kiddush the entire Shabbat, because that's also the entire era or the entire period where Kiddush is significant. Right? Now, he makes the deduction, and now, of course, like the Talmud loves to do, is going to challenge him. Do you think that that's correct? Boom, we're going to challenge you. And that's why we have another very important key word over here called Eisvei. Eisvei is a very important keyword. Yeah. What is the difference between Eisvei and Meisvei? Good question. What's the difference? Anybody knows what's the difference between? I actually discussed this in a previous class. Let's see if anybody remembers. What is the difference between Eisvei and Meisvei?
Eisvei is like, this is an idea we're going to discuss. Meisvei is, this is an idea that we're going to end up challenging.
Both of them are challenges. They're both, Eisvei and Meisvei are both challenging something that was said previously. Yeah?
The Meisvei is the challenge is going to be wrong? Or no?
Eisvei and Meisvei. Eisvei is usually when a particular person is presenting a particular challenge. Meisvei is when it is the Talmud in general, an anonymous challenge, which means we're not telling you who is presenting the challenge. Sometimes we do present to you who is presenting the challenge, and that is done with a meisvei, with an eisvei. Now you look over here, it does not say who's challenging, so it says eisvei. He was challenging. I would assume it's therefore trying to tell you that Ravina is challenging Rav Nachman, who made this deduction. You deduced so-and-so, and I'm going to challenge your deduction. Eisvei, we have a challenge. What does it say? Leilei Shabbos, veleilei Yom Tov, the evenings of Shabbos and the evenings of Yom Tov. Yesh bohem kedusha ala kois. There is kiddush on a cup. V'yesh bohem askaros bebirchas hamazon, and there is a remembrance to them in the grace after meals in birchas hamazon. Yeah. Shabbos v'Yom Tov, however, Shabbos and Yom Tov, which means the day of Shabbos and the day of Yom Tov, ein b'hem kiddush ala kois, there is no kiddush on a cup. V'yesh b'hem askara b'birchas hamazon. However, there is a remembrance in birchas hamazon. For those of you who are not exactly sure what we're talking about, right? We have, of course, kiddush. We just spoke about kiddush. You also have that when you're doing the grace after meals, the birchat hamazon. What do we say? We say, Retzei v'achlitzei Hashem Elokeinu b'mitzvaysecha. Sounds familiar? Over mitzvahs yom hashvi. We basically mention Shabbat. Every time we say grace after meals on Shabbat, we mention it whether it's in the night or the day. So we have a Tanaic quote that says, Kiddush is at night, Kiddush is not during the day. Remembering in the Birkas HaMazon is both in the night and in the day. So that seems to challenge Rav Yitzchak's deduction that Kiddush, in fact, could be in the day.
Where did we just say that it's not at night?
Huh?
Where did we just say that it's not at night?
We said it is at night.
No, you said
I said not a day.
I'm sorry, so where does it say here that
This is a Tanaic quote from Eisvei till the word V'isal Kadaitach is one long Tanaic quote. The Tanaic quote starts from the word Leilei Shabbos, which is the eves of Shabbat, V'leilei Yom Tov, and the eves of Yom Tov. There is Kiddush on a cup, and there is remembrance in grace after meals. On the day of Shabbat and the day of Yom Tov, which is Shabbos v'Yom Tov, ein b'hen Kiddush ala kois, there is no Kiddush on a cup. V'yesh b'hen haskara b'birkas hamazon. However, there is a remembrance during the grace after meal.
how can we have a challenge? It's written here, it's literally stated that we don't do it.
Right, that is the challenge.
So didn't the guy who challenged that?
Oh, now we have a brilliant guy, Yehuda, right? Yehuda. It's a brilliant question. Didn't he know this? The answer is he did. However, Ravina still uses to challenge him because he wanted to see, well, how do you resolve this challenge? The general assumption in the Gemara when we have a challenge is that there is a resolution to the challenge. That's what we assume. We assume that the rabbi who made the original statement knows what he's talking about. There are some rare situations where the Gemara concludes that there is no basis and actually throws out that particular opinion. It does exist.
So the challenger is
Yeah.
going to touch this up in a different way.
Huh?
The one who knows this pasuk already, he has a different way of explaining this pasuk.
Again, you could assume that, but let's hear. Again, let's not get over ourselves. Generally, you're correct, is that we assume that he knew this and therefore he dealt with it. But the flow of the Gemara is it's a challenge. It's very common. We have a challenge. He challenges him, right? Eisvei, he's challenging Rav Yitzchak's analysis by bringing a quote that seems to contradict the conclusion of his analysis. Yeah, now he says the il sarka daitoch, and if you're going to think Misha loy kiddush be'erev Shabbos, if you're going to think that somebody that did not make kiddush on the eve of Shabbat, mekadosh v'hilach kol hayom kuloi, he says that the entire Shabbat, Shabbos v'yom tiv nami mashkachas lahu. Right? You can see that there is a situation, there is a scenario where you'll have to make kiddush in the day of Shabbat and in the day of the Yom Tiv. The yesh b'hem kiddush ala kois, there is kiddush ala kois. The e loy kiddush mi'urta mekadosh lemocher. If he did not do kiddush before, he'll do it tomorrow. Now this seems like a direct and complete contradiction to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's analysis. How can we resolve this? Anybody have any idea how we could resolve this? How to resolve this contradiction? Huh? He says somebody does. The Gemara usually does. Usually, not always, but the Gemara usually resolves the contradiction. Yeah. So we say the Eloi Kasani. So that is the resolution of the challenge is if not we taught, meaning When the Brisa told you there's no Kiddush in a day, we're not telling you that it's impossible ever to have a scenario where there's Kiddush in a day. That's not what we were trying to say. I'm sorry, that's not what was going on. Right? What we were trying to tell you is that in a normal situation, it doesn't happen. Yeah? We're not trying to teach you a situation for a guy that made a mistake. We're trying to teach you the real rule, how it's meant to be. And this is very common. The Brisa, yeah? Let's read the Rashbam, he explains it. The Eloi Kasani. The Tana Loi Bala Hedis Lon Din Adam HaPoisheya. The Tanaic sage was not trying to teach us what the rule is of a person who's negligent, or somebody that some emergency situation happened, and he failed to fulfill the words of the sages. That's not what we're trying to teach you. Okay? Which is very common. Very common. We're trying to teach you what the rule is, what you're meant to do. We're not going to tell you what if you didn't do it. Right? I mean, very often we will tell you what if you didn't do it. But that usually is a separate teaching. First we tell you what you're meant to do, and then we tell you what if you didn't do it. Yeah? Makes sense? Good. And that's essentially the resolution to the challenge. Now you think that we're over challenging this guy? Chas v'shalom. We're going to challenge him again. Should we do the next? I think we're running good on time. We'll do the next challenge as well. Eisvei. Once again he challenged him as follows. We're going to challenge him once again with a Tanaic quote, Kavod Yom Kavod Laila. The honor of the day and the honor of the night, Kavod Yom Kodim, the honor of the day comes first. Right? Which means if you have a choice to honor the day of Shabbat or the night of Shabbat, yeah, as the Rashbam says, if you don't have so much wine and you don't have so much food, right? You don't have enough food to have a nice Friday night meal and a nice Saturday meal. You should leave it to this day because the honor of the day supersedes the honor of the evening. Yeah? How's that a challenge? How's that a challenge to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's statement? Huh? It's not. We haven't yet got there. Calm down. We didn't finish the quote. Oh, Shmuel Kopel over here. I tried to trick you. I tried to trick you guys. And Shmuel, Talmudic master is not going to let me get away with this. Right? I tried to trick you. We're still in the middle of a quote. Right? Wait till you finish. It says, Kiddush hayoim, mipnei Kiddush hayoim, yeah. Kiddush hayoim, which literally means the sanctification of the day, but really, when are you supposed to sanctify the day is really at night. Yeah. So Kiddush hayoim, mipnei Kiddush hayoim, koidem lekavod yoim. However, it is more important the Kiddush of the evening prior than the meal of the next day. What does this mean? If you're saying, listen, if I'm going to have a nice day meal, I'm going to have a lot of wine, I'm going to be able to enjoy myself. But if I'm going to make Kiddush Friday night, I might not necessarily have wine to enjoy myself during the day. We say the Kiddush goes first at night. So it shows that there's an importance, it's an importance to make Kiddush the night before. Which means, if you have a choice, I'm going to make Kiddush Friday night, or I'm going to have a nice cup of wine to drink on Saturday day, the answer is you should make Kiddush Friday night. Because Friday night's Kiddush supersedes. Even though if it's food, if you have food, right, or goodies or snacks or whatever it is, enjoyable food, and you're like, listen, if I'm going to eat it Friday night, I'm not going to have it Shabbos day, you should save the food to Shabbos day. However, when it comes to Kiddush, if you know that if you make Kiddush Friday night, you won't be able to enjoy yourself as much on Shabbos day because you won't have wine. And how fun is a nice meal without wine? Come on, right? So then you use the wine for Kiddush Friday night, and because it supersedes the day, right? As a matter of fact, we still see this till today. A lot of people make Kiddush Friday night. They won't make Kiddush meaning they themselves will make Kiddush Friday night, and on Shabbos day they'll listen to somebody else. Why? Because there's a concept that Kiddush Friday night supersedes the day. All right? Kiddush Friday night is more important than having a nice meal during the day. However, once you make Kiddush, if you have food and you're like, listen, if I eat too much food Friday night, I won't have for Shabbos day, you should save it for Shabbos day. Huh? Oh, very good. I'm happy that you don't realize how it's a question. You're not yet meant to, yeah.
Is that why we stand up Friday night and sit down Saturday day for Kiddush?
Perhaps. First of all, that's a minhag. Some people also stand on the day. Some people stand in the day as well. It's a custom. It's a custom that some people stand. Well, generally Friday night people stand for Kiddush, but Kiddush Friday night is actually the real main Kiddush. As I said, when we make Kiddush on Saturday, on the Shabbat day, it's really kind of a rabbinical addition that was kind of thrown in there. It's not the real Kiddush. As a matter of fact, there's no blessing of Kiddush. We just say a list of verses that speak about Shabbat, and then we say Bora Pri Hagafen, which is the blessing on wine. We don't have a specific blessing for Kiddush. Only Friday night we have a specific blessing for Kiddush. Right? So we see that the importance of Kiddush by night is way more important than the day. Now, you're asking me, how is this a challenge to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's analysis? So, as the Gemara very often does, sometimes you have a brisa that clearly, unequivocally challenges a previous opinion, and sometimes the brisa doesn't clearly challenge that opinion, but the analysis of that brisa will. So now we're going to analyze the brisa, and through the analysis of the brisa, we're going to present a challenge to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. How's the analysis? The im isa, if there is, which means if there is the possibility that you're talking about, there is a possibility of making Kiddush during the day. Lishavke ad lemochar v'liavid beitarti. Why don't we tell the guy to leave his cup of wine till the Shabbat day and do both together? He'll do Kiddush and respect the day simultaneously. If we say that respecting, honoring the day is more important than honoring the night, however, Kiddush at night supersedes the day. Well, hold on a second. If you're telling me that you could make Kiddush the entire day, why don't I make Kiddush on Saturday day with I only have one cup of wine, right? So I'll make Kiddush Saturday day, and then I'll do both. I'll be honoring the day, and I'll be making the Kiddush. Right? Seems cool, right? Huh? No, it's to leave it. To leave it. Leave it to the day, meaning leave Kiddush to the day. Don't say Kiddush Friday night. Only say Kiddush during the day.
But that doesn't honor the night.
Huh? Who said we have to honor the night? We said we only have to honor the honor of the day supersedes the honor of the night.
You said that in regards to Kiddush.
I said regards to Kiddush, that's exactly the challenge to his point. The very fact that we tell you that you should make Kiddush Friday night, contrary to honoring Shabbat day, that proves, seemingly the Gemara is saying, that seems to prove that you don't have the option to push it off to the day. Because if you had the option to push it off to the day, then why don't you do both simultaneously? You'll be honoring the day at the same time as you're making Kiddush. So that seems to, again, because the Brisa says, make Kiddush Friday night, and don't leave that cup till the day, seems to be that you don't have that option. Because if you had that option, then you should have done it. Right? Understand? Good. Kanai Nahara. I'm looking at the different views, and Facebook went up really quickly and then went down. Because the people on Facebook, they can't pay attention. This is very deep analysis there. They lost it. They're like, can't handle this. People maybe on YouTube, a few guys on YouTube, they're like, okay, I could actually sit and pay attention, think about the deep Talmudic things. Guys on Facebook, they're like, they come in, there's like this guy actually talking logic, forget it, done. Right? I can only see if it's a joke, if it's entertaining, I can deal with it. But if it's
viewers on X.
Huh?
We've got some on X.
On X? What's X?
X.
Oh, X, like X.
X.
Yeah, but no, because they're into typing. They're into typing. They could focus a little bit
The
better.
people on X are smarter than people
They're
on
smarter, exactly. They're smarter. They could pay attention. Anyways, Weitergegangen. Anyways, where are we? So that's the challenge to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Yeah. So now Amar Lei, he said to him, which means Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is defending, huh? Lishavke Adam Machar will have a debate. Tarti is both. Do both. Huh? No! What do you mean? We just told you leave it to the day. If you left it to the day, how are you making Kiddush at night? Huh? I don't see how on earth you get that. Where do you see make Kiddush? It doesn't tell you what to do on Friday night. It says leave it till the day. Means leave it to the day, period. Zel. Huh? You leave it till the day. Means you leave it to the day. And do both of them. Mean do both of them on the day. That's the whole point. That's the whole point he's trying to tell you.
You do both Kiddushes on the day.
The whole point is that according to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, you could make Kiddush during the day. So the Gemara is saying, okay, so go make Kiddush during the day, and then you did both.
I don't understand the word both. What is both? Both what?
Both honoring the day. We said you're honoring the day and you're making Kiddush, right? The other way, you're not honoring the day. You're doing Kiddush, but you're not honoring the day, right? So here his whole point is save it till the day, and then you did both. You'll do Kiddush and you'll honor the day.
By rights, the day
Huh?
starts from the night, so we should say honoring the daytime part of the
On the daytime, correct. Yeah. Huh? It sounds a little bit like, I don't know where you got that. Where does it say? What are you reading? Which one?
It's also the honor of the day. It's also a little bit.
Where's it starting? Yeah, so V'levid Beit Tarti, do both, meaning Kiddush Hayom, do Kiddush in the day, Vavinami Kavod Hayom Ksas, and it would be a little bit respecting the day, even though it's not during the actual meal of the day, it's still honoring the day, that the fact that you're doing Kiddush during the day. Again, the point is you should do both simultaneously. That's the point. So that's the point. Even though that we said that the honor of the day is that you leave the meal and the goodies to the day, even though you're not mamash doing it in the meal, you're doing it before the meal, but at the end of the day, it's still a little bit of honor for the day that you get, that you're not doing during the meal, but you're doing it before the meal. Yeah? Good. Let's weitergegangen. Where are we? Amar Lei, he responds to him. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak responds to Ravina as follows: Chaviva mitzvah b'shaita. It is chaviva is like loved. It's loved, or it's I guess, huh? No, it's not beautiful. Chaviva is more like it's cherished. A mitzvah is cherished in its time. Huh? No. Hider is almost like Hider is more like nice, beautiful. Yeah. Chaviv is more as it's cherished, it's loved, it's appreciated. Meaning God appreciates a mitzvah in its time more than if it's not in its time. And since the time of making Kiddush is really Friday night, even though, yeah, you're right, you could technically leave it to the day, but because you want to do the mitzvah in its time, therefore you should still do it at a night. So this is the way he is neutralizing the challenge to his statement. Let's remember, his statement is you can make Kiddush, you can make the blessing on Kiddush the entire day. You missed it Friday night, you can do it all the way as long as it's still Shabbat, you can make the full bracha on Kiddush. That's his statement. We brought two challenges. The first one we neutralized, the second one we're in the middle of neutralizing. The second one very clearly says that if you have food, you should save it for Shabbat day, because Shabbat day is meant to be honored more than Shabbat night. However, if you have only 1 cup of wine, you should make Kiddush Friday night. And the challenge to that is, well, if you should make Kiddush Friday, if you're really meant to honor the day by saving food to the day, why don't you just save that Kiddush for the day, and then you can make, if you're allowed to, meaning if you're allowed to make Kiddush during the day, save it to the day, then you do Kiddush and you honor the day simultaneously. And the answer that he gives is that even though you're right, that if you do Kiddush during the day, you will be making Kiddush and honoring the day simultaneously. However, there is an advantage of doing a mitzvah in its time. Don't procrastinate. That's the lesson we have over here. Don't procrastinate. Do a mitzvah in its time, which means when it's meant to be done, and therefore it is worth it to make Kiddush on Friday night and not honor the day by the fact that you're not drinking the wine during the day that because you only had one cup, right? So therefore you're honoring, you're making Kiddush in the time where you make Kiddush. You're making Kiddush in the time you're meant to make Kiddush. Because you're meant to do a mitzvah in the time that you're meant to do it. Very often there's a mitzvah there's a time that you're meant to do it, and if you didn't do it, there's makeup period. Right? Makeup period is not, you're not meant to leave a mitzvah for makeup period. You're meant to do a mitzvah as soon as you have a chance. That's it. Yeah.
Is it a mitzvah to eat on Shabbat?
It is a mitzvah of oneg Shabbat, which means to enjoy Shabbat. There is somewhat of a mitzvah. It's not literally a mitzvah to eat. It's a mitzvah of oneg Shabbat. However, the rabbis said that what does pleasure mean is eating. So you actually, definitely according to the rabbinic interpretation, you are obligated to eat on Shabbat unless you are completely disgusted of that food.
How does it not qualify that the eating portion of this
Yeah.
equation isn't also presented as being the most important to do at the beginning of the Shabbat?
Again,
Why put the mitzvah up?
but that's what he's saying is the honor of eating is more during the day. It's more
But how does that
relevant during the day.
The honor of Shabbat, honoring it when it starts to do it on time?
It's a good question. Seemingly, the honoring of Shabbat exists the entire Shabbat. And within the entire Shabbat, the real time to do it is in the day. Right? So the real time is in the day. Friday night, you could also do it. Right? You see how in halacha, you have the main time that you're meant to do things, and then you have, if you didn't, or makeup, or perhaps. So seemingly, the honor of Shabbat could be done on Friday night, but it's better to do it during the day. Now, if you could do it in both, good, sei gesund, do in both. But if you cannot do it in both, you should do it in the day because that's the main time that you're meant to do it.
So what is it exactly that would differentiate the Kiddush from the food?
The type of food. Meaning, Kiddush is wine. Right?
No,
So again, if you have, by the way, the same thing is true today. If you have a whole bunch of different foods, right? And one of them you like better, you're actually meant to eat it Shabbat day versus Friday night. Till today, it's a final halacha. That's the way it is.
But we said that
Yeah.
ideally we don't push a mitzvah off. So why is it that we're allowed to do it with the food, or that it should be done with the food? But the wine, on the other hand, has to be when the Shabbat is instantiated.
Because as I said, there's the time where it's meant to happen, and there's the time where there's a time where you could do it. You could do it, but it's not necessarily when it's meant to happen.
We said it's meant to happen at the beginning of Shabbat.
Again, Kiddush is meant to happen at the beginning of Shabbat. The honor of Shabbat is not necessarily meant to happen at the beginning. Yeah? The honor of Shabbat is any time in Shabbat is meant to honor Shabbat. Kiddush, the whole concept of Kiddush, sanctifying the Shabbat, is actually a declaration saying you are recognizing that it's Shabbat. Now you should do that right when Shabbat comes in, right? What are you going to do? You're going to wait till the end of Shabbat and then declare, I recognize it's Shabbat, Shkoyach. Thanks for this. Thanks for your recognition. You know, it's all past already. You know, Shkoyach. Thanks. You know. Yeah. Imagine a woman complains her whole life that her husband never recognizes him. She's on her deathbed and he's like saying, you know what, I recognize everything that you've done. And she's like, shkoyach, you know, you should have done it a little earlier, you know. What are you doing now and I'm about to die? You know, same thing, Shabbat. You're going to do it all the way at the end of Shabbat when it's almost over. Right? So when it comes to Kiddush, because the whole point of Kiddush is declaring the fact that you're recognizing and appreciating and welcoming the Shabbat. So therefore, it's meant to happen as early as possible on Shabbat, which is Shabbat, Friday night. Right? The honor of Shabbat, on the contrary, the honor of Shabbat is about having pleasure on Shabbat. The pleasure could be any time during Shabbat, and therefore it's perfectly fine if you do it during the day. What? Correct. But according to this, it's more prevalent during the day.
Right, that's why
Yeah.
That's why you're not passing over mitzvah. You're still in the time frame of B'nai Shabbos. So the more wine you have, the better food you have, you do it till the day, because
Again, you're going beyond and analyzing something that I don't know where you're getting it. I look at the words and I see what the words say. I don't take it and try to philosophize what they really meant. I don't know where that comes from. Okay? It says clearly the honor of the day is before the honor of the night. Why? I don't know why. Why? Why is the day more important than the night? I don't see why. Why not? Why not have pleasure? If Shabbat is about having pleasure, why don't you have pleasure from the beginning of the night?
I'm trying to answer his question to why
Yeah.
you push off the food to Shabbos day.
Yeah, why?
Because it's not about, it's not time specific. I get Shabbos is the entire day of Shabbos. Within that, Shabbos day is more important than Friday night, for whatever reason.
Yeah, okay, it could be. So what you're saying, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, is that Kiddush actually has a time it's meant to happen, which is at night. If you don't do it at night, you could do it during the day. Whereas honoring Shabbat or having pleasure on Shabbat is kind of equal throughout the entire Shabbat.
But not so, because they say that it should be done preferably during the day.
Correct.
So I guess the
See?
difference is
You see? You
status.
think you're so smart? You look at him, he's challenging you right back.
Yes.
Yes.
I guess the difference is
Yes.
the status between the mitzvahs. One is meant
Yeah.
to kick off the Shabbat.
Correct. Kiddush is meant to kind of kick off the Shabbat. That's a good terminology. Kiddush is meant to kick off the Shabbat, whereas the pleasure is meant to be the entire Shabbat. But for some reason, it says that the pleasure or the honor is meant to be more during the day than during the night. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, it's concept at the beginning. It's concept, as he said, kicking off the Shabbat. Good. Kenai Nohore. Where are we? We kicked off the Shabbat. Where are we? Huh? Thank you, Hashem. I think tomorrow we're going to continue with the next part. The next part is basically the Gemara is basically challenging this very precedence. Okay, his answer in order to neutralize the challenge, he says that a mitzvah is appreciated in its time more than not in its time. Even though very often there's a makeup period, but it's better to do it in its time, meaning in the proper time to do the mitzvah. That's the best thing. That's when it's most cherished, when it's done in its time. The Gemara is going to challenge that very precedent and saying, hold on a second, is that the case? Right? You're making an hypothesis that this rule applies. He didn't bring a proof to that this rule applies. He just said this rule applies, which is very often what the Amoraic sages do. Right? And I like using the terminology hypothesis because that is the proper terminology to use for this. Right? Because essentially, in order to neutralize the challenge against him, he says a piece of philosophy. He doesn't bring another authority. He doesn't bring an authority to resolve the challenge. He brings a philosophy to resolve the challenge, and he says, my philosophy holds like this. Now, if you have a philosophy, or in this case, somewhat of an hypothesis of what you think halacha is, now the Gemara will say, okay, well, let's put that to the test. Let's critique that and see if that is in fact consistent with everything else we learned. Because if it's not, we have a problem. Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to start doing tomorrow. Again, remember that he resolved his challenge based on an hypothesis. Okay, and this hypothesis is going to be challenged beginning from tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem, we're going to challenge this hypothesis. Hold on, one at a time. He raised his hand. You didn't raise your hand. You go first. You didn't raise your hand. He raised his hand. Go. Yeah. Okay, you go first. What's that? It's actually there is a perik el devarim. Yeah, it could be a perik. Where do you see that? Where in Rashbam? Huh? Chaviva mitzvah shayt. Rashalim kulun achrei b'bigdam mazin. Where do you see that? I don't see it even. There. Chaviva mitzvah kida amar be'el devarim. Yeah. What does it say? It says le'il Daft samaches, means prior, which means if you actually look back to samaches right here, you'll see. Huh? Oh, you don't have the Gemara. So if you had the Gemara, you would go. It literally says La'el. La'el means previously, which means in our Masechet. It's in our Masechet and Perek Eila Dvarim. Correct. Yeah? Go for it.
So would it be safe to say that we can derive that anything that has to do with sanctification, that embodies a bracha, has a moed, which is the beginning, like he said, the month, and
Right.
the Shabbat, like Kiddush is to sanctify the Shabbat, and the bracha for the month is at the beginning of Shabbat.
It's meant to be.
Like the bracha for Kiddush is at the beginning of Shabbat. So anything that has to do with sanctification, it has a bracha, it has a moed, it has a time, a specific time at the beginning.
Seemingly so. And as a Talmudic sage or Talmudic student, try to think about, let's think about when we do Kiddush. When we do Kiddush on Shabbat, in the beginning, Yom Tov, when else do we do Kiddush? We do Kiddush Levana, right? Why don't we do Kiddush Levana right in the beginning of the month? Meaning the sanctification of the moon. There's a reason we don't do it in the beginning. The reason is because you only sanctify it once you have a little bit of pleasure from it. Right? And that's why we push it off. Huh? Essentially because the time passed. Meaning you're meant to do it in the beginning, not you're meant to do it in the beginning, but you're meant to be doing when you actually could benefit from the moon. Now, if you ask me today, no one benefits from the light of the moon, really, because we have so much light. But in the olden days, when used to be in the pitch dark with all this light, what do they call it? Light pollution, right? So there were people that used the moon. There was a way of using the moon as a form of light. Yeah.
So a bracha of sanctification has to also be comprised of a pleasure component too.
Says who?
I don't know. It seems like wine is something that people take pleasure in, and having the light from the moon.
Well, the light of the moon. We don't use wine when we sanctify the moon.
No, I'm talking about Shabbat night.
So you see that it could be that there's a concept. Wine, generally, wine was like a prestigious drink. Like if you brought wine even today, by the way, if you bring wine to the table, it's like, wow, we're having like an official meal. It's like, you don't sit down to every dinner with a cup of wine, unless you're French. Yeah. No, but I'm saying, by the way, in ancient Israel, they say a lot of people would drink wine every day. But even then, it was like they would sit down, they would have a proper meal, it would be an established meal. Good, let's sit down and let's eat.
They're like taking a bagel with a cup of wine.
Huh?
They're like taking a bagel with a cup of wine.
Whatever, yeah, a cup of wine shows that it shows that it's an establishment, it's something important, it's something prestigious, and that's why, by the way, every Jewish ritual is meant to be done on wine, except for very few. All the life cycle rituals, a bris, a chasana, right? Pidyon haben we even do on wine. Every time you do a mitzvah, pretty much, you do it on wine. It shows the level of a prestige, establishment, appreciation, etc.
Everyone wasted all day to do that.
Huh?
To make every bracha with a glass of wine and smash all day.
We smashed. Any other questions? Yeah.
This Levitical mitzvah of the Shaita, that it says that
Yeah.
he pulled it out from Shabbos because he had to burn the actual offering of Shabbos. So this was his hypothesis for the reason for why you have to actually burn the fat and the limbs on Shabbos.
We're talking about fats and limbs. Who's talking about fats and limbs? Huh?
Same Rambam.
We're not doing Rashbam yet. Calm down. One thing at a time. We're in the Gemara. We'll go to Rashbam another time.
So my understanding of how, my understanding of how they actually got that was that his hypothesis or his reasoning for that was an hypothesis based off of wherever he gets it from.
I guess well, first of all, he has an hypothesis, and he says that he gets that from there. Yeah, he gets that. Again. Obviously, he had a source, and this was his source. That's what the Rashbam says. The Rashbam says his source. And interestingly enough, the Gemara is still going to, even though he had a source back then, the Gemara is going to challenge that whole concept over here.
So the Gemara's answer that this is just your way for why they did that, for the reason why it actually burned it on Shabbos. There could have been a whole different reason. Like your reason that needs to be in its time, that's your hypothesis for why you should actually burn on Shabbos.
So generally the rule is that if you have an hypothesis, even if you have a basis for the hypothesis, which means you analyze a particular place, you have to, it has to be consistent. Okay? As a matter of fact, truth is always consistent. There's no such thing as truth that is inconsistent. We spoke about this many times. But it's a very essential aspect of Talmudic study that you must understand, is that truth by definition is consistent. 1 plus 1 will always equal 2. It won't not equal 2. Okay? You won't one time say, hey, you know what? Cool. I did 1 plus 1 equals 2. This time it was 1 plus 1 equals 3. No, it doesn't work like that because it's truth. Truth is consistent. And therefore, if you make an analysis, and I can prove to you that analysis, I can prove to you somewhere where, based on that analysis, there is something that is inconsistent with that analysis that shows that analysis isn't in fact true. Now, it could be partially true. We very often will reorganize. Sometimes we have an hypothesis, and then we have a challenge to the hypothesis, so we reorganize the hypothesis to circumvent that particular challenge. But the fact is that by definition, truth cannot be challenged. Because if truth is challenged, then it's not necessarily true. You cannot say, I know for a fact it's true, but there's a contradiction. No. Right? Either there's a problem with the contradiction. Maybe you're not understanding the contradiction properly. Maybe we can rethink the contradiction. Right? Or you can rethink the truth. But you cannot say that two truths contradict each other, because by definition, that is not true. Right? Because truth is always consistent with itself. Right? I know in the Western world, lahavdil elfei avdalis, they want to say that truth is relative to the person. It's basically an easy cop-out to allow people to be lazy and do whatever the heck they want instead of actually trying to follow the real truth. Okay? Because truth is in fact stationary. There's one truth, right? And that truth, you can discover it, you can connect with it, you can deny it, but truth is always consistent. There's never a time that I have one truth and you have a contradicting truths. If I have a different truth than you, then the answer is one of the two are not true. Right? You understand?
What's the whole thing with that people
Yeah.
walk with the tallest?
What's that?
This is the whole thing in Gemara.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're both right? Like people walking over the tallest?
They can't hear.
No, they're not both right. They're not both right. When you have two people arguing, they can't hear.
They can't hear Shmuel.
They can't hear Shmuel.
Give him a microphone.
Give him a microphone if you
So
want.
one.
Again, you're asking me when two people, there's a case in the Talmud where two people come to the rabbis and they're each holding on to a piece of a garment, and the rabbis say to split it. We're not saying they both own it. No. We're saying we have no way of figuring out who owns it. By the way, in the Gemara over there's a discussion, and it's possible that they both picked it up simultaneously. If they both picked it up simultaneously, then they could technically each own half. Technically. Could be. In the possibility they literally picked it up together, then it could be that they both own half. Right? But again, you cannot have conflicting truths.
And it's not true. One of them did it earlier, just that.
Again, if one, correct, there's a difference between what's true and what not always do we know the truth. And as a matter of fact, as I've discussed this as well, from a philosophical perspective, there's a big difference. If you're going to tell me that you only do what's true, you die. Because you cannot live today with following 100% truth. It's impossible. Right? There's many decisions in your life that you have to make that involve a risk that it might not be true. You get on a plane, you know you're going to reach the other side? No. You don't know. It could be that you'll fall and die. Right? And if you're going to say, well, I can't know 100% that I'm not going to die, so then you're not going to go on a plane? I don't know 100% if I'm going to die in the car, so I'm not going to get in the car? No. Your whole life is full of decisions that are made based on the fact that you don't always know what's true. Now, if you don't know what's true, you have to make the decision that makes most sense towards the truth. But that doesn't mean it's 100% true. And that's why very often you can make a decision and it contradicts the other, and you don't understand why your decision is any better than his. But the reason is because neither of you determine the truth, and therefore neither of you know the truth, and each of you are deciding with which not necessarily truth you're going to live by, because you don't have the choice. You don't always have the choice to figure out the truth 100%. You understand? Good. All right, we're going to go into study on our own. Huh? What's that?
Very good.
Study, and whoever just joined, where we have Mendel and you as well, and maybe even you. I'm gonna print the worksheets, and we're gonna have a little bit of a meeting here, so you know what's going on, so you know what's flying. I think maybe even you too, right? Good. Kenai Nahara. Right? We want to thank everybody for coming, everybody online, everybody in the class, and if you didn't subscribe, like, I don't know, whatever you got to do to make sure that you are in the next class. Because if you don't come to the class, I get very angry. You know, I know exactly who you are. I don't.
We might do a ritual.
I don't. Well, I don't. Shh, don't tell me.
We might do a Talmudic ritual.
We know where you live.